Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News. It is Saturday, March 21st, 11:18 a.m. here at South Florida Conservative News Center. And we had a historic moment in the last couple of days for those of you who are big fans of the war in the Pacific and World War II, but it occurred through the services of the IRGC. And we'll talk about that at this moment. And we're going to talk about the real damage occurred by the Iranians launching missiles at Diego Garcia. Okay. Let's measure that in damage. The recent Iranian missile strike on Diego Garcia was a total failure. Hit nothing, burned nothing, changed nothing, at least on the surface, and at least for the Americans in a way. But history tells us that might not be the right way to measure it. And that gives the IRGC and their missile master a gold star for the week. And because we've seen it before, we're able to explain it to you much more easily. April 1942, just months after Pearl Harbor, the United States needed something or anything to show that Japan was not untouchable or unbeatable. So they launched what was called the Doolittle Raid. 16 U.S. bombers, I think they were B-25s, were launched from an aircraft carrier on a mission that barely made any sense on paper. The damage was minimal. They carried more fuel than bombs, but the effect, Japan suddenly realized the war could come to them. And that realization changed everything. It was a perception issue, it was a perception victory. So, Diego Garcia, what actually happened here, fast forward to today. Iran launches two missiles towards Diego Garcia, a remote US UK base in the Indian Ocean. One fails in mid-flight, another is intercepted. We don't know where exactly, but probably not, 20 feet away from the facility. No impact, no destruction, as I said. So what does it matter? Because Diego Garcia is not a frontline base. It's supposed to be untouchable from militant Islam and other people. So it was supposed to be far away and it was untouchable, and it's still untouchable, but now the perception is that it can be hit. Okay, so that's untouchable until now. And what makes this even more interesting, there is a strong reason to believe Iran had to stretch this missile's capability just to attempt to strike. The likely system that they used was the Khorramshahr? Probably don't say it right. And that does not have the range for that. So what they probably had to do is some modification and give it a smaller payload, this, that, and the other thing. We're not going to discuss the fine points of it because it's not really germane to the topic, but they could. It was a good idea. Good idea, bad execution. But then again, the Israelis have been killing every smart scientist they have. So probably didn't have the guys to fix it yet. Yet. So that system was never really designed to reach that far under its normal conditions. So as I said, they lightened the payload, that pushed the range, but physics doesn't give you anything for free. That's what you have to remember. When you extend the range that much, you're going to lose accuracy and a lot of it. So this wasn't a precision missile attack. It wasn't even likely to be a reliable strike. It was something else entirely. It was not about hitting Diego Garcia. It was about showing that it could be attacked. See, nobody even bothered to attack it before, even stupidly like this. So even if it had gotten in the water 20 feet away, even if it hit the island, hit nothing, even imperfectly, even unsuccessfully, because once a missile can get close enough, the psychological effect begins. And that's where the real game is being played. However, hands up if you think the intended psychological target was the United States. You would be wrong. Now look at Europe, already hesitant, already divided, already hating the United States, already calculating risks. We found articles out there that they have pretended to be on the US's side and are dragging their feet about bringing any warships in for escort duty. So, what does a strike like this do for you? It introduces a new variable. Distance no longer guarantees safety because if that missile could have gotten close to Diego Garcia, if you swing around with your compass, you can hit Europe. And if Iran could repeat this, if another missile follows, then European leaders suddenly have something they didn't have before, a very good excuse as far as they're concerned, not a surrender, not an alignment, just enough to hesitate so they do not have to help the United States. Delay, distance, measured response. So it's important as what happened is what did not happen. Okay. Iran did not strike European cities because that would ruin the effect that they are trying to instill. Iran has not unleashed any of its paid terrorist cells that are in these countries because Iran does not want to galvanize Europeans against Iran because right now they are boo-hooing that they were innocently on their way to whatever, a church service, and the Americans jumped them. Oh, and the Jews. Always remember, and the Jews, because that would unify the West instantly. So instead, they're staying in the gray zone. They're threatening assets. They're expanding their reach. They're applying pressure without triggering total war. It's very calculated. It is not reckless. These are not, they are ignorant, but they're not ignorant when it comes to politics and tactics and things like that. So I don't think they're a bunch of angry sheep herders. There are a bunch of them, but they aren't running the show in Tehran. So just as we said, the Doolittle raid shocked Japan into reacting. Iran may be trying to do the opposite, not to provoke unity, but to quietly fracture it. They can smell the fact that the EU members and those in NATO are trying to find any excuse not to help the United States. The United States right now, and it's not just the United States and Israel. There is a coalition of other Arab countries, as we all know, but do not get broadcast to because it's easier to vilify the United States and its Jewish masters. For those of you on BitChute, actually now it's YouTube. I'm sorry. I'll disqualify that last statement. The huge amount of anti-Semitism that you will receive in the comments sometimes or whatever, because I delete the really rude shit, is now YouTube. So all the other feeder channels, you don't have to contain yourselves to that for your anti-Semitism or Rothschilds or Jew hate. You can do it on YouTube. It's encouraged. But enough of that. So what we're going to have to see though is one missile is not going to do what they need. They need to fire another one. It's a good idea. It's enough to probably get the French out of the game. It's enough to get the Norwegians out of the game. But to get the entirety of them out, they're going to have to launch another missile. And it's going to have to do a little bit better than the last one. So, as long as they're not quite sure where it landed, which unfortunately mainstream media will give them those precise coordinates, mainstream media in general for this war has functioned as the forward observer, the bomb damage assessor, all those things for the Islamic Republic. And they are proud of the fact that if any American dies, that they are really part and parcel of that. They are. Regardless of what we're doing as a combat team, any of these other things, when they're telling you what's been hit, what hasn't been hit, how bad it's been hit, it allows the planners in Iran to figure out where the next bomb is going to drop or missile is going to drop. So yeah, anything that they tell you when they hit an American military base and they say, "Oh, well, you hit this thing." Well, they know what the base is set up, basically. If they say that you blew up something on the southwest, corner of it, now they know they have to move along to wherever. Move in, add five, add five up six, whatever. So anyway, I'm getting off the thing here. Iran does not need to destroy Diego Garcia. In fact, it may never touch it again. If only needed to show that it could send a missile further than was expected and hope that it's enough of an excuse for the allies of the United States to sit this whole thing out. Funny as it may be, it is only benefiting the Trump administration when this happens because the United States in general has been very wary of its European cousins and especially the British. And those of you who are doing these some of the shipping shows, they never really come across that fact because when you're in that life and you're in the shipping world, it's a very close-knit community. So I think what you're seeing is a lot of lack of moral courage because you know you won't get invited to the next big ship event. You won't get the information that you've been getting all these years. And that's what happens when you're related, when you're a click whore, is that that became your job. Once it became your job and it's paying for your lifestyle, you've pretty much already given yourself up. You don't see it that way, but that's how it is. So anyway, we're moving along. Good trick on the Iranians' point. Give credit where credit's due. And like I said, they're just giving the Europeans a massive out, which they will probably use for a funny, not funny, haha, but funny, whatever. There is an article on the HMS Dragon, which is a British warship. I don't know where they got this museum piece from. And they're training their crew like pretty much on how to shoot down missiles, maybe shoot them down, maybe suck them up in the body of the ship. I don't know. But if that dragon gets loose anywhere near the combat operations in the Strait of Hormuz, my vote is going to be that it is going to become a reef, or it is going to become a tragic story for why England never talks to America on paper again. The British need to stay out of the water. The once great maritime superpower can barely get across the canal, which is why they dug that tunnel. And that's about all we have for this. But like I said, that's the story with this thing. Don't get crazy. It's not going to destroy Diego Garcia. Physics is against it. Unless they're just going to try to hit it with the empty body of the missile just to prove that they can do it. Physics is against it. I could be wrong. My physics degree goes out the window 6 months ago. I just stopped paying my dues. So other than that, have a good weekend, and we will talk to you during the next crisis. See you later.